Commentary. I hope you're having a fabulous day wherever you are. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed your day. So today I wanted to talk about a couple of different things. First of all, I've been getting a couple of questions and I thought, hey, why not answer these questions online the way I would? I mean, without getting into too much detail, why not answer the questions online and see where we get? Now, the one thing I'll say is the weather's getting better, and that's something positive we're looking forward to. But by now, we would have had the spring market in full tilt. What am I noticing? I will get to that after, but let's take a few. Let me get to a few questions, and then I will give you an update as to what I am seeing. So the election is over and everyone is exhausted. Let's just say, okay, even buyers are exhausted. But let's be honest, while people may be exhausted, or you may be feeling exhausted, you should be also feeling buying power, because buying power is real. And while people are feeling exhausted, they also have the power to buy before all of this craziness kicks in. So you've been watching homes, markets up, sometimes down, going sideways, the whole 9 yards. And you're wondering, where do I stand? And each segment of the homes fall into a different segment or a different class, so to speak. And buyers are feeling exhausted. But, take a step back and just kind of understand that you do have the power. You have the power right now because we're seeing homes sitting on the market a bit longer. People dropping prices. Now, homes that are sitting on the market longer, pricing changes, you can tell those homes are not priced properly. I mean, you have to be very on point. And even when you're on point with pricing a home, you will notice there's some, a house down the street could sell for whatever. And you never know what people's motivations are, right? So what I would say is, yeah, homes are staying on the market like between, who knows, they're no longer on the market for 2 days or 24 hours or not even. They are staying on the market a bit longer, giving you the opportunity to actually get home inspections, get conditions on your home, so on and so forth. And so having said that, people are asking me, is now a good time to buy? This is one of the questions I've been getting. And it really kind of depends on your situation, if it's a good time to buy or not. It's a good time to buy if you're a first-time buyer, you've qualified for a certain amount, you're on the lower end of the spectrum of what you're looking for. This will give you an opportunity to get into the market without 10,000 people outbidding you. Yeah, this will give you that opportunity. And then I get asked the question, is this a good time to sell? And so, people always say, oh yeah, should I sell now? Should I wait till, and people have these notions that spring is busy and fall brings serious buyers and wait for better pricing and who knows. But what we've seen is all of these things can be so confusing. But what we've seen over the last few years and with ever since 2020 thereafter, what we've seen is the market is doing all sorts of things, right? There's no such spring market as such, even though we call it the spring market. The market is the market. People are going to buy when they buy, and things are going to move forward. So what's the best time for you to buy? Maybe the question that you should ask. And the best time to buy is when you're comfortable, when you have gone through the process, you've got your numbers aligned, you've got your let's say the amount you qualify for, you've got your numbers aligned, so to speak, with how much you will get to buy a house based on all of the numbers that you've run through your mortgage broker. And once you do all of that, you can decide, hey, if this is a good market or not. But there are deals to be had, especially in the condo space, if that's what you're looking for. And if not in the condo space, then there are deals to be had. You never know what their motivation is. And no one's saying that you're going to steal a home. I mean, the home is the home and the price is the price. And perhaps the market's a bit flat, a little bit down. But I don't think you're going to get like slash 50% if that's what you're looking for. So one of the things I say to people, they say is now a good time to sell. Well, now as compared to what, right? There are no guarantees of when it's going to be a good time. Like now could be a good time to sell for sure because you know exactly what is happening in the market. But next month could be a better month to sell. Yes, you don't have a crystal ball. But if things go in an opposite direction, the best time to sell is now. But the numbers have to make sense for you. So the first thing I tell people is one of the things you should figure out is really how much you have owing on your mortgage. And you can call up your bank or whoever you have your mortgage with and just say, hey, if I was to pay off this mortgage in 2 months, what would be the payout amount? And I say 2 months because by the time you decide, it might be 2 months before you put the house on the market. And anything beyond that, it'll be a lower amount. So you could say, hey, in 6 months, what would be my payout amount? And they would give you an amount based on your calculations now as to what would be owing. And at that point, you can decide, okay, so if this is how much I pay and this is how much I'm looking to sell for, what can I buy? What would I qualify for? What new amount for the mortgage would I get? And having said that, you can decide what's going to work best for you, right? A lot of times I'll see people run into a little bit of disappointment because they've really put the cart before the horse. They've decided that this is what they're going to do, and they don't do all of these checks and balances. And then they're disappointed. So then people say, one of the other questions I've got is for people looking to buy, what are my closing costs? Like, how much is that? And I would say to them, listen, closing costs range between 1% to 3%, sometimes a little bit more. So when you get your mortgage amounts run for you, the mortgage broker or your bank, whichever one you want to work with, would run out those numbers for you, would tell you how much you would have to pay in closing costs, how much approximate numbers, how much you would have to pay in land transfer. Of course, you would need a lawyer, and it depends on what a lawyer would charge, and so on. And once you get those amounts, you know exactly what you need to have in your hand to close at the end of the day, right? But really, I think where the problem starts is people actually misunderstand how much they would qualify for. I actually had a person have a chat with me not long ago, and I'm not a mortgage broker, so I kind of said to them, it's best you go to your bank or to a mortgage broker and get qualified on that real amount. And the person was adamant. He's like, well, I'm looking at my current wage, and I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at that, and I think I'm going to get 800,000 or at least 7 to 8. And I'm like, he's like, what do you think? And I didn't want to disappoint the person. So I said, look, I would suggest you go and talk to someone who specializes in this. But just from the look of it and what you told me you make, I don't see more than 500. And so then he was kind of disappointed. He was like, really, you see that little? And I said, yeah, that's what I see. And then he talked to someone, and then they kind of gave him the same sort of numbers without, like, but I kind of said to him, you have to really give them all of your paperwork for them to run the true numbers. Because if you've got some loans and you've got other stuff going on, then those numbers are not really the true numbers, right? So the other thing someone asked me the other day is, what is the conditions of sale? Like, what is this? And I kind of explained to them, a lot of times they would include financing. Like, a condition of sale means once, 5 days for financing, or 10 days for financing, or 7 days for financing, whatever it is, that's a condition. And that condition needs to be met. And people need to fulfill that condition. If not, within that period of time, they can get their deposit back. If they don't, and so the timelines are very important. We have very stringent timelines. People have to be very on top of things. Sometimes you're working with clients who are very relaxed and they don't believe in kind of rushing through it. They've got 5-day condition of financing and they're just taking their own sweet time doing stuff. And I tell people, listen, you can lose your deal based on that. The other condition could be inspection. So you would have an inspection on the property. And another condition, like if you're buying a condo, it would be the status certificate, really, really important. And I would tell you to never sign off that waiver on the status certificate, because that tells you the financial health of the organization, right, of the condo corporation. Plus, it gives you all of the rules and regulations as well. So, for example, if you had a dog and you were not sure about whether this condo allows dogs, that's where you find the policy on a dog. And I think it's really important that you know this, because, back in the day, all of the condos, the older condos, had no dog policy. So you were not allowed to have a dog. Over time, condos started allowing dogs, especially the newer ones, right? But you'll see them called restrict. So if I were to send you a listing, you would look at the listing and it says restrict, which means there's a restriction on the pet, whether it's the number of pets. Maybe they'll say one dog, one cat, one dog or one cat, two dogs, two pets. So it can be just two, a cat, a dog, two dogs, a cat and a goldfish, a dog and a goldfish, those kind of things. And then they would also have a restriction based on how big your dog can be. I had this one condo, a person loved it, but there are restrictions. They were all over the map, but the written policy said under 20 pounds, which means if you have a dog bigger than 20 pounds, you can be in that condo. So those are some of the conditions that you would look for if you had a house you were selling. People put in conditions, which means, and sometimes people are mistaken, if these conditions have like, let's say 3 days for inspection, right? And 5 days for financing. So the 3 days are not 3 days in addition to the 5 days, unless it's written that way. Typically it's 3 days, and people need to have inspection waived, like, or fulfill the condition, or they could end up losing out on it. So I'll give you an example. I had a place for sale, and the agent said to me, oh, well, I'll give you, we're just dealing with the financing, so I can give you both the waivers at the same time. And I was like, no, sorry, the waiver for inspection is this day, and therefore you need to fulfill that. But timelines are very important. These are like legal documents. Timelines are extremely important, so people have to be aware and follow the timelines. If not, they could end up losing the house. And sometimes people get disappointed. They're like, oh my goodness, I missed it by like a little bit, but you missed the timeline. So just bear in mind, if your agent's on your case about signing off because your timeline's coming to an end, you understand why. Now, so that was conditions of sale. Then the other question I get is, how long will it take me to sell my house? And well, we can tell you what typically happens. Like we'll take a look at the area, and every area is different. So people think that, hey, we should have like a general number. Yes, there's a general number saying so many days, but every area, every pocket is a little different. And so you'll find that some areas they sell a little faster and some areas take a little longer to sell. And what are my top 3 strategies for selling your house? Like, what do you need to do? Your house needs to be spotless, clean. It has to show A1, like above the norm. Like your house needs to show. Why would someone? So I mentioned it the other day. The buyers of today are very sophisticated, right? They're younger people. What they do is they sit at home and they look on their computer, and they do not come out to see a house until it meets their criteria. And so it's really important that your pictures are just beautiful. Like, I'm not saying make up the pictures where the house doesn't represent, the pictures doesn't represent the house, because then people get even more irritated. But your pictures need to be on point, so it makes people come out and see the rest of your house. Your house needs to be on point. So why would I buy your house when I can buy any other house on that block, especially during hard times? And I've heard people say to me, don't you think that, because homes are not selling at such a high price, and, and because they're like sitting on the market a little longer, maybe we don't have to do all of this stuff to it. And I said, well, it's quite different. In a market such as this, you have to do even more to it. You have to make it look like someone wants to come and live in that house. They want to buy it. They absolutely want to buy it today. They want to live in it, and they can't stop thinking about it. And that's what we do. And the third thing, which is really important, is your pricing strategy. Your pricing strategy has to be on point. If your house is not moving, it's been on the market, you're overpriced. Bottom line, there's no other way to put it. If your house is not moving and it's been on the market, you're overpriced. Unless you've got like a really big issue with it. How much can I afford? I answered that question earlier. Typically, we say for 4 to 4.5 times your wage. You make $100,000, you would probably qualify for 4 to 450 in that price range. But you need to go to a mortgage broker. I'm just giving you a rule of thumb, so to speak. But you need to go to your bank, because if you had student loans, you got car loans, all of that is taken into consideration. And so if you've got all of those loans, you will qualify for probably less, because you've got all those loans that are eating up into your credit capacity. Should I rent or should I buy? This is the other question I get. And so one of the things I say to people is, if you have extremely low rent, like let's say your rent is $1,000, which is unheard of these days. But let's say your rent is $1,000 because you got into the market, the rental market at a good time. And let's say you're in a building that doesn't allow, that is rent control. And so they can't really increase as much every year, maybe 2.5% is the max. So so if that's the case, I would say you have a great deal, but you only have a great deal if you're taking the rest of the money and stashing it aside. So let's say the rent was $1,000 and market rents are like $2,400 for a 1-bedroom or $2,200 in your area. If you're taking the other $1,200 to $1,400 and saving it and making that money make money for you, then yeah, okay, it's a good deal. But if you're not doing that, then let's say tomorrow something happens and your rents go up. So these days, like an apartment building is almost impossible to find in a vacant apartment, right? So a lot of times the places that are available are condos that are available, and some condos are not rent controlled because they're newer buildings. So then what happens is, if the landlord decides that they want to sell the place, and whoever the new owners are decide they want to use the place for their own use, then you have to find your own place. You have to move. There's no if, ands, or buts. You have to move. And at that point, are you going to be stuck with paying the market value, which could be a lot higher than what your rent is? So let's say you started renting a place and the rent was, let's say you were in this place for a long time and the rent was like $1,500. And then the landlord decides, hey, you know, my kid is getting married. They're going to come back home. They're going to do blah, blah, blah. Or they've sold the place and whoever bought the place wants to live in it. Then you have to go. And in that case, you have to now find rent at the new market value, which is quite a bit. And if you were paying like $1,500 and now to rent, maybe even a smaller unit is like $2,500, that's $1,000. Nobody budgets for that sort of change. And so in that case, I would tell you, you know, it's pretty obvious what's better. So when it comes to renting and buying, you know, price, obviously, the price may vary because buying may have the same or more of a payment. And I say the same or more because it really depends on what sort of interest rate you get and how much you put down, the whole 9 yards. The second thing with buying is you have to have a down payment. With rents, obviously, you still only have to have first and last. But with buying, you have to have your down payment and your closing costs. And not everybody has that. With buying, you have to do repairs and maintenance. And but with renting, while you may not have to do repairs and maintenance, you might have to deal with, you know, outdated appliances or decor or the whole 9 yards. And with renting, you cannot make any changes to the unit, but with buying, obviously it's your own, so you can do whatever you want with it. And then in addition to that, like if you're paying the market value like it is right now, then you're paying someone else's mortgage. And if you're paying someone else's mortgage, then why not pay your own? Because you're then building equity by owning a place. And on the tail end of it, this is what I touched on earlier. Like if the landlord wanted, you know, their let's say their daughter needed a place, or their parents needed a place, or they decided to sell and the new owners wanted to live in the place, it wasn't an investment, then you would have to vacate the unit. And by buying, there's security, right? Like a lot of people, one of the things they hit with is when they have to move, it's a big, it's quite a problem for them. They have to move, they have to find a new place, they have to find something they like. They may not find all of those boxes, may not check, right? And let me tell you one last thing before we go. Seeing that you have no questions, the one thing I'm going to say to you right now is with the rental market, it's extremely hard to get in because there's a lot of scams going on both ends, you know, whether it's a landlord getting scammed or it's renters getting scammed. There's so many scams going on, but landlords are actually getting so much fake information that they actually are doing a lot more work, and they are screening people a lot more. If your numbers don't add up, if your wages don't add up, if your if any of those don't add up, like your referrals, the landlord is going to turn you down. And you could be going on, I've seen a few people, they've been like they are like exhausted, they've been like looking for rentals, like, and they've been turned down for like a dozen of them because they don't meet the criteria. You don't have enough income for what, and you need a bigger house, and you need all of these things, and you don't, you're not getting into the market. And so those are very realistic things to be mindful of when you're looking to rent, because you could be left out in the dark and not have a place to live. So these are some of the things that I will say. I mentioned it last time about the scams. There's a lot of scams going on. So if you are looking to rent, make sure you're like going through a reputable agency you are working with a realtor, if you're renting a private, don't send money, because a lot of people are like, there's a scam that someone was telling me that they have to pay $100 to see a place. And I'm like, why? And they're like, yeah, you have to pay $100 to see the place. And I'm like, okay. And obviously they're not getting the $100 back. And then there's this bigger scam about someone who was being like, who put a fake place up for rent and was sending people to see the place. And then he took the money, but he was like the fake in between guy. So like, just be mindful about who you're chatting with, who you're giving money to. If you're working with a realtor, they're not going to take cash money and from you. We have like rules in place, and you know, your first and last have to be on a draft made to like the brokerage they're with, and it has to be made so that it goes into the trust account for the brokerage. So so pay attention to all of these things. And then on the flip side, if you're a landlord, you've got even bigger problems, because there are people who are selling selling people fake information, and so just be mindful. If you're a landlord, make sure you're doing your due diligence. If not, you're going to be ending up with somebody who's occupying your space and doesn't pay because they've got fake information that they've given you. So seeing that you have no questions, I will say good night to you. I want to say thank you for joining me during your dinner hour. My name is Jacqueline Watson, and I'm a realtor with Sutton Group Tower in Toronto. And until next week, we'll see you again. And if you have a topic you'd like me to unpack a bit further, feel free to DM me. Let me know, and we'll get a guest on for you. So have a good evening, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.